We begin the current Daf, Mesechtes Kidushin Daf Ayin Ches. We begin on the second line down at the top of the Yomid. But the Gemara continues a related discussion from the previous Daf, where this parak Asara Yochsin, the last parak Mesechtes Kidushin, is discussing regarding the yichus of an individual regarding marriage, regarding the Mesechta of Kidushin, which we were discussing regarding specifically regarding kahuna, and that's where the Gemara continues regarding the specific prohibitions of marriage as it applies to kahuna. Shiur's corresponds to Bekazach and Chesko, turned up Daf Chaim, and during today's Daf, Shpischus V'Achin B'nei Yisrael, and throughout the world. Some discussing today's Daf are Kohen Gadol Be'almana. And the Kohen Gadol marries an almana actually gets two sets of lashes, although seemingly it's one negative prohibition. There's actually two psukim, as we'll discuss, of lo yichalel and of lo yikach, which that will relate to the machlekes Abai and Rava regarding kiddush. If you only do Kidushin, you get Malchus. And they both agree, however, regarding Baal, if you do Bia, then you're going to get Malchus, as we'll explain regarding the Psukim. Now, they both agree regarding B'machzi Gerishase. When someone remarries the woman that he divorced after she married someone else, Shem Kiddush B'loi Baal, do Kidushin without Bia. Or Baal B'loi Kiddush, She'ena Loika, that has to be both Kidushin and Bia, and the Gemara is going to explain this is all based on the Gzeres HaKaz of the Psukim of how these specific lavin are mentioned in the Torah. Then the Gemara continues regarding the four opinions we mentioned in our previous Mishnah, whether a Kohen is forbidden to marry a Basker. There's four different opinions regarding how to qualify that prohibition. And the Machlekes Rabbi Nachacham regarding Ho'imer B'nei Zeh Mamzer. Is a person believed to say that my son is a Mamzer? So begin the current Daf Ayin Ches, second line down at the top of the Amid. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. It says, Kohen Gadol Be'almana. Now, the same thing is, as Rashi points out, is a Kohen Hedyet with a Grusha and Chalala, because we learn one out from the other. As we said in the previous Daf, Makan Zarechulin, just like by the Kohen Gadol to the Almana, his children are Chalalim. Also, over there, by the Kohen Hedyet, his Zare are Chalalim. So therefore, by Kohen Hedyet, you also have what we're going to describe in one moment, this Isser of Lo Yechal. But be that as it may, we're picking the primary source, which is Kohen Gadol Ba'almana. The halacha is when they get married, like a shtayin, actually gets two sets of lashes. Why would that be? It's one negative prohibition. No, because there's two psukim. Achas mishum, one's because what it says in the pasuk in Yikra. It says almana and a grusha and a chalala and a zayna. This is going to Kohen Gadol. As eila loy yikach. Now the word kicha you should already know throughout this whole mesechta. Kicha, Mr. Efren. The word kicha means Kidushin. Now, we're talking about over here that the Kohen Gadol is doing Bia after Kidushin. That's where Rabbi Yehuda says he's going to get two sets of lashes. So one is because of the Kidushin itself. The Achas Mishum, which afterwards is Lo Yichalal, where when he's having Bia with the Almana, we already established in the previous Dafim that not only do the children become Chalalim, but the wife, the Almana, also becomes Chalala. So he's violating Lo Yechalel. So therefore, there's going to be two sets of lashes. One is the marriage, and one is when he does Bia with her, he's creating a chalalas in the woman. Says the Gemara, why don't you say there's another one? Because he's desecrating his children. So that's not just Lo Yechal, but it's Lo Yechal Zarai. Says the Gemara, we're talking about B'Shaloi Gomar Bi'asai. He didn't do what's called a Gemar Bia. He didn't consummate this relation, where there's not going to be any chil zer because you're not going to be able to conceive without a full bia. But the woman herself, she becomes a chalala just with what's called hara, just with initial genital contact. As the Mishnah teaches in Bamas Abnon Gimel Beis, echad ha'ma'ara, ve'echad ha'goymer, either way, you kana your kaina, and there's no difference between what type of bia it is. So she herself becomes a chalala with initial contact. The chil zera is only when you do gemar bia. You didn't do a gemar bia. So therefore, there's going to be the two sets of lashes, one for the marriage of Lo Yikach and one for the bia of Lo Yichal. However, Masav Rava asks from a Mishnah Mesechtes Makis. Mishnah says, Amana ugrusha. If a Kohen Gadol has relations with a woman that was both a widow and a divorcee, so lacha is loika mishum shnei shemis. He's going to get lashes for two sets of violations. One is she's an amana, and one is she's a grusha. Says the Gemara, says Rava, my love, isn't the Mishnah teaching us shnei shemis besulai only 2 negative prohibitions and not more. Says the Gemara, loy, no. Most definitely, when it says Shnei Shemois, you're right, it's going on Gerusha and Almana. However, it means Shnei Shemois al Zeh v'Shnei Shemois al Zeh. For each one of those titles, one for Gerusha, one for Almana, you're going to get 2 sets of lashes. One's for Lo Yikach and one's for Lo Yichal. So, therefore, it's not difficult on Rabbi Yehuda's teaching. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, so then aim a Seifa, look at the Seifa. What are you seeing from the Seifa? Gerusha v'chalutza, it says. If she's a Gerusha and a Chalutza, and the Chayiv Ela al Achas. You're only reliable for one. So you see that it's only 1 set of lashes you're going to get, not 2. Says Gemara, no hachikam, this is what the Mishnah is saying. In the Chayiv Ela al Achas, you're only reliable on one of these 2 Shemais, meaning on the Shem of Gerusha is Chayiv, for all the Chiyuvim that are dependent on being a Gerusha. But a Chalutza, that Shem is not going to be Chayiv even any lashes, because Chalutza is not biblical, it's only D'Rabbanan. And Ula Olam Shnei Shemes. But it is for 2 Shemes, for Lo Yikach and Lo Yichal. Says the Gemara, really? But Chalutza D'Rabbanan? And this the Gemara asks many places that really, the same question, Chalutza is only rabbinic. V'atan in the Braisa, it says in the Pasuk, Gerusha, that the Kohen had, it's not allowed to marry a Gerusha. Ainly other Gerusha, I would only know a divorcee, Chalutza Minayin, for a woman who went through Chalitza. How do I know that too? Tamalim, it says in the Pasuk, Ve'isha, the extra word Ve'isha is coming to teach us, even the Chalutza. So you see, it is biblical. Says the Gemara, no, Midrabban, it's only rabbinic. The Kra asmachta bi'alma. The pasuk is only an allusion to this idea that the Rabbanan is being alluded to in the Torah, but it's rabbinic, and that's what the Sefer means in halachas. But it doesn't mean only 1 lashes; it means only for 1 category, but it's going to be 2 sets of lashes. That was Rabbi Yehuda's teaching. Now, continuing on this theme, Amabaya, he says Kiddush. If the Kohen Gadol or the Kohen Hedyot, for whichever one of the psulas that were mentioned for them, if he does only Kidushin, Haret Mukadeshes Liba the Bazu, he gives on the Kidushin, Loika, he's going to get lashes for getting engaged. Baal, if he does Bia, Loika, he gets lashes. So the Gemara explains. Kiddush Loika, why when he does Kidushin he gets lashes? It sounds like Kidushin, which he's being Kainahar. That's 1 set of lashes. And then when subsequently he does Baal or does Bia, Loika Misham Leichal. That's because he's making her into Chalala. However, Rav Ami disagrees, says no. Baal, if he does Bia after the Kidushin, then he'll get 2 sets of lashes. Loi Baal, if he doesn't do Bia, Eina Loika, he's not going to get lashes even 1 time. Why not? Because the pasuk says, Lo Yikach, don't take. And then it says, V'lo Yichal, don't desecrate. Which is teaching us, Matam Lo Yikach. Why is it can you not get married to the Almana? Mishum lo yichal, because of not to desecrate her. But if you never go to a chil, you never have a bia, then there's not going to be lashes even on the kicha, even on the kedushin. That's machlokes Abaya and Rava. Will you get lashes for the kicha without a bia? Now, however, the Gemara tells us that although they have this machlokes, but they do agree in certain cases. Umayda Abaya. Abaya agrees, meaning what does it mean Abaya agrees? Even though he held that you can be chayiv for malchus, for the Kidushin by the Issachar without a biyam. The following case, he agrees that, by Kidushin, he says, for the Issachar he says, each one is independent. The pasuk is not making the kicha dependent on the ichal. He doesn't learn it the way Rava does. So that's where he says, you be chayv in each one independently. But in the following case, a regular Yisrael, b'machzik Yerushasai, when he divorces his wife and she gets married to someone else, and then she gets widowed or divorced from that husband. And even though the pasuk says, Lo yachol lo shuv lekachta, he could not go back and take her back again, which is a nazhara of Kidushin, of kicha. Abaye would agree, Shem kidesh v'lei bal, if he does only Kidushin and not bia, she'eina loike, he would not get lashes until he does bia, because here the pasuk explicitly makes the Kidushin dependent on the bia. Why? Because the words in the Torah are for him to take her back as a wife. So since kicha is kedushin, what do you mean when you say the words liyas leili isha? You already know kicha means an isha. Oh, must mean the ishus of bia, a wife, for someone that's going to be intimate with. Oh, v'holek. He doesn't have that if he just gets engaged. And therefore, I would agree in that case that the pasuk is explicitly telling you that you would have to have the bia also to be liable for the lashes on the machzik Roshasa. That's the way Abai would agree. Then another case, Umayda Rava. Rava would agree, and that is even though he requires by the Issa Kahuna, he requires both. That's only after Bia, that's after Kidushin, that you would go ahead and be liable on the Kidushin, but Kidushin itself you would not get lashes. He agrees in the following case. The Kohen Gadol b'Almana. When the Kohen Gadol marries an Almana, Shem Baal b'loy Kiddush, if you do Bia without Kidushin, Shaloika, that you would get lashes. Meaning, although he's the one that seems to require both, that you won't be chayiv for the Kidushin unless you have Bia, but he would agree if you do Bia without Kidushin, that the Bia is not dependent on the Kidushin. So although Kidushin depends on the Bia is not dependent on the Kidushin. Why? Because the Torah says, and he should not desecrate his seed amongst his people. And he did the chil. So therefore, although Kidushin is lo yikach mishum lo yichal, so that's for the Kidushin. But the chilul itself is not dependent on the Kidushin. Now, then there's a case that they both agree. And they both agree in the following case, meaning, even though according to both of them, for a kohen and the woman that's forbidden to him, he's going to get lashes on the bia without Kidushin, like we just said. Even Rava agrees that bia without Kidushin michayev, but they both agree by Yisrael, that's machzik gerushasev, when she got married to someone else, shem bol v'loy kiddush, that he did bia without Kidushin, she'ein aloika. Both would agree that you would not get lashes. Why? Because derech likuchen astra Torah. The Torah made it forbidden only through Kidushin. On the bia itself, the Torah never said there's a prohibition. It was only through marriage, because it says la yachol lashuv lekachta liyes loy leisha. It's only through a likuchen, through a Kidushin, that the Torah said that it's forbidden for you to be with your ex-wife. But just liyes loy leisha was never forbidden.
Sounds counterintuitive that the Kohen Gadol can be mizana with a woman and not get malchus.
What do you mean, mizana?
Right here it says that-
This, which case, the machzik gerushasev?
Yeah, according to...
Machzik gerushasev by Yisrael. The Kohen Gadol, to the contrary, everyone agrees that if he does bia and does not do Kidushin with Almana, he's going to get lashes. We're saying by machzik gerushasev, when a Yisrael marries his ex-wife who got married to someone else, that then everyone agrees that he's not going to get malchus just for the bia. She's a single woman, you don't get bia for that, you don't get malchus for that, but it's only because he gets married to her and then does bia, then he would go ahead and get malchus. Now going back to the halacha of our Mishnah, we had many different opinions. Rabbi Huda Omer, he said the first opinion was bas ger zachar. So although we were speaking about a chol first in the Mishnah, but then related, because Rabbi Huda compares the daughter of a male convert, kabas chol, to the daughter of a male chol, which just like over there, it's going to be pasal kahuna, so too the bas of a male ger is going to be pasal for kahuna. So time to learn the Bryce explaining and elaborating on his opinion. Vidaimi says, bas ger zachar, the daughter of a male ger, kabas chol zachar, he said, is like the daughter of a male chol. And the Brisa explains. He says, and logic would dictate this concept of Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Ma'achal, if we find by a chol, which what's a chol? A chol is a man born from a forbidden union of his parents. Like this child of a grusha to a kohen, the child's a chol. Now, Shabbat mitipik sheri came from from a kosher droplet of seed, because his father and his mother are both Jewish, and still bitei psula, the daughter of this chol, his pasla, as the Gemara said on the previous daf of Ayin Zayin and Alf, we said it says zaroi, his seed. So we compare him to his seed. So just like the father, the kohen that got married to the grusha is machal his zera, so to his son the chol is also machal his zera, that his daughter is pasla for kahuna. So ger shabama tiba psula, a ger who comes from invalid seed. His parents are not Jewish. He converted. In the din shabit psula, isn't it a kal v'chaimer that his daughter should be pasla? So therefore, Rabbi Huda is based on the kal v'chaimer. Says the Gemara, wait a second, that's not a kal v'chaimer. Malachal, what are you going to say by the chal? Yeah, he could make his daughter pasla kahuna. Sheken yitzirase ba'avera. His formation was in sin. His mother became pregnant in the prohibition of marrying as a grusha to his father the kohen. But a non-Jewish man to a non-Jewish woman, their conception is not in sin. We don't believe in the sin in marriage of the sin, right? There's no such concept. So maybe that ger's child could be kosher l'kuna. Says the Gemara, no, Kohen Gadol ba'amana yichiach. The high priest to a widow will disprove this, meaning she'in yitzirase ba'avera, the Kohen Gadol himself, his formation was not in sin, and yet still bitay psula. So you don't lose track. Meaning, there's the parents who committed a sin, and their child becomes a chal. The chal's child also becomes pasal l'kuhuna, like we said, makash zagay loy. So just like they make their child pasal l'kuhuna as a chal, so his child's also going to be pasal. So we want to learn out bas ger zacher from bas chal zacher, that he's from a kosher seed, and he's machal his zera for sure by a ger. He says, no. What do you mean? That chal, he was born in sin, so maybe he's going to make his daughter pasal l'kuhuna. A ger, he wasn't born in sin. He is not zera kashera, but he wasn't born in sin. Maybe his daughter be kosher. But he says, okay, don't learn that from the chal, learn that from his parents. The Kohen Gadol to the almana, his bas is psula. His bas becomes a halala, and the father's seed he was not born in sin. He was a regular. His parents, the Zaydas, were regular people, and yet still we see that he's going to make his daughter apostle. So I'm just pointing out, we're going one generation up. The Gemara says, no, you can't learn it from there either. Malakan Galamana, she can be Yasabavera. The bia of the Kohen Gadol to this almana was in sin. So that's why the daughter that's born from them is going to be pasal l'kuhuna, because her formation was in sin. What are you going to say with a ger that marries the Israelis, where that's a regular kosher marriage? Why would you say that their daughter should be pasal l'kuhuna? Says the Gemara, chol yechiach. No, a chol will disprove that, because a chol that marries the Israelis, his marriage is not in sin, and still their daughter is pasal l'kuhuna. So b'chazar adin, this is what's called, okay, that it recycles, and that is le'rizeh k'rizeh. Each one's characteristic is not the same as the other one, meaning the chol is not the same as his parents, the Amalek and Gadol, that each one of them make their bas pasal l'kuhuna. So you can't say that that's the reason why we're stringent over there, because the other one doesn't have the same reasoning. So what's a tzad ha'shavash ben? The common denominator of both of them is she'enan b'roiv hakol, meaning they're different than the rest of the community, either because one's formation is in sin, which is the chal, or his bia was in sin, which is his parents, the Kohen Gadol almana. So therefore, they make their daughter pasal l'kuhuna. Okay, avanei avias ager. I'll also include the ger then. He's also she'ein b'rev hakol. Why is he not b'rev hakol? Because he comes from non-kosher seed, so he's not the same as the rest of the community, and therefore b'ita b'sula. And therefore, that's why Rabbi Yehuda says, we know the halacha that bas ger zachar is going to be pasal l'kuhuna, like we find by bas chal zachar. Says, no, that's not a good source. Why? Because there's something unique about the common denominator of both the chal, that his daughter is pasal l'kuhuna, and his parents, Kohen Gadol almana, that their daughter is also pasal l'kuhuna. There's an element of sin. Either the bia is in sin, or the formation is in sin. But there's an element of sin. But a non-Jew, there's no element of sin. Says no, okay, you're right. Lo yitema, don't say, as we said before, that what will disprove that you said you cannot learn out bas ger zachar from bas chal zachar. We disproved it from Kohen Gadol b'amana. No. Elaima, I'll say another common denominator, a different case. We'll disprove it. Mitzri rishon yichiach, a first-generation Egyptian convert who marries a first-generation Egyptian woman convert, where that child that's born is not formed in sin, and the bia itself was also not in sin, because they're allowed to marry each other, and their daughter is pasal. Why? Because she's a second generation. The Torah tells us that only der shlishi, only third generation is permitted to enter the Jewish people. So you see that, okay, you should learn out from Mitzri Rishon that it can't be because of that the B is Bavera, Yitzhak Bavera. So don't disprove. Say, you cannot learn out from Chol because Chol will machmir because Yitzhak Bavera. That's not the primary characteristic like you see from Mitzri Rishon. So learn out from Bas chol zachar to bas ger zachar that the bita should be possible, like Rabbi says. So the Gemara, no, that's also not a good source. Malam mitzirishin, what are you going to say from the first generation Egyptian convert? Shekin inagah lo b'kol. He's not able to marry into the entire Jewish people. What are you going to say with a chal? And that's not the same category. Those are talking about kahuna. What are you saying about how you proving from mitzirishin? And how's it going to be regarding a ger? A ger is allowed to marry into the kila. Says Gemara, yeah, b'chol yechiach, where you can't say that the reason why mitzirishin, that the daughter is going to be possible, is because not royal love b'kol, because chal will disprove that. Chal is royal love b'kol, and still the daughter is possible for kahuna, so v'chazadin. Okay, so the logic recycles. The characteristic of chal is not the same as a mitzirishin. Okay, so you can't say either one is the primary reason why we're being machmir and saying the bas is psula. So what's a tzala shavashav, and what's the common denominator amongst them? She'ein b'roiv hakol. They're not the same as the rest of the majority of the Jewish people, either because, like the chal, his formation was in sin, or by the mitzirishin because they're not fit to marry into the Jewish people. But al kapanim, they're not b'roiv hakol, ubita psula, and the daughter is possible. Okay, afadei avis agares. I'm also going to include the convert she'ein b'roiv hakol. He's also not the same as the rest of the Jewish people, where he comes from non-Jewish parents. It was what's called tipa psula. Okay, and therefore pita psula. That should be the source, and therefore the daughter is going to be possible for kuna. So wait a second. What do you say with the common denominator both of the mitzirishin and from the chal? Shekim paislim bibiyasam. If any one of those two cases would have bia with a woman, a Jewish woman, it would make her possible from kahuna. As the Brisa taught in Ayin Dal Mabeis, a 9-year-old boy, as long as he's not over 9 years old, that his bia is a bia, if he's a ger amayni ma'avi mitzirishin whatever, a chal, their bia is pesula. They invalidate the woman from kahuna. A ger is not like that. A ger can marry. We said unlike that a kohen cannot marry geyeris. We said a ger can marry a kahenis. It would not make her possible with his bia. So how could you learn out to say that a ger, his bas would be psula from mitzirishin and chal? But it's not true. They have a certain stringency that ger doesn't have, and maybe that's why machmir there to be psula. Says the Gemara, the last question is not true. Rabbi Yehuda, ger nami paisel b'biyasai. He actually does hold that if a ger got married to a regular Jewish woman, that bia actually would make her apostle to kahuna. How does he know that? He actually learns it out from this source that to say, just like a chal that comes from tipa kshera, he's going to invalidate a Jewish woman with his bia. So a ger that comes from a tipa psula, isn't it a kol shekain that is going to make her into a psula? And therefore, yeah, that's why you actually could learn out now Rabbi Yehuda's halacha bas ger zachar from a bas chal zachar, because there is nothing that they have more stringent by the mitzirishin and the chal than by ger. Ger, if anything, is more chamer. Because even the one thing we thought we found that their paisel b'biyasan says we didn't know. From a mahatzad, he actually learns out from this dina to say that we do learn out from there itself that if they're going to be paisel b'biyasan, for sure ger is going to be paisel b'biyasan, just like we learn abita psula. So once we learn that out, for sure we can learn abita psula, and that's the source of Yehuda's halacha. That was opinion number one in our Mishnah. That again, that if the father is a ger, then the daughter is pasul for kahuna. The second opinion we mentioned was Belezah ben Yaakov Oimer. Then we mentioned two more opinions in the Mishnah. One was Rabbi Belezah ben Yaakov. He said no. He said if Yisrael shenasa geyeris or ger shenasa bas Yisrael, if any one of the parents are not a ger, I don't care if the father's a ger or the mother's a ger, the daughter's going to be kasha for kahuna. But if a ger then marries a geyeris, then the second opinion, Mishnah Belezah ben Yaakov says, oh, then the door is going to be possible for kahuna. That was the second opinion. And the Mishnah said that's whether a ger or a freed slave, even for 10 generations, until his mother's Jewish, then it's going to be, if both parents are gerim, then it's going to be possible for kahuna. That was the second opinion. The third opinion was that Rabbi Yisi, he said, no, even the ger that marries a geyeris, the daughter is going to be kasha for kahuna, and that was the third opinion. So again, one was saying that if the father is a ger, it's a problem. The other one was saying that, no, it's a problem only if both parents are gerim. The third opinion said, no, it's not a problem even if both parents are gerim. And now, the Gemara quotes Tanya Braisa that quotes a fourth opinion. Shimon ben Yochi Omer, he says like this. He says, Giyoires pechusa mi ba'ashalosh b'yemechad. a female convert, a 2-year-old baby, was converted to Judaism. She's going to be kosher for kahuna. So Rashi points out that there's 4 different opinions that we're seeing from our Mishnah, as we just mentioned. According to Yehuda, a bas ger zachar, the daughter of a male convert, is going to be puzzle, even if that ger marries a regular FFB Jewish woman. That's opinion number 1. Rabbi Eliezer, if there's any one of the parents that are Yisraelim, it's going to be kosher, but a ger that marries a geras, the door is going to be puzzle. According to Rabbi Yossi, even if a ger marries a geras, the door is going to be kosher, but, this is where the but is, related to the last opinion, but the conception and the birth has to be in sanctity. So I don't care if both parents are gerim, but they already were gerim, already 5 years, they already live in the Ramat Beit Shemesh, and then they go ahead and have a child. Great. So then that child is going to be able to marry to the guna. Reb Shimon says, even the geyeris herself is going to be kosher as long as she was not fit for bia when she was not Jewish, so that she's not in the category of a zayna. Because we presume non-Jewish girls are having different types of relationships, would make her into a zayna as a 7-year-old, and therefore, since she's ready right to be, she would be possible going out zayna. But when she's 2 and she converts, so he's the most lenient of them all. That's opinion number 4. And he brings the source. He says the pasuk in Midbar. It says B'chala taf banoshim, when they were fighting against Midyan. So it says that all the young ones of the women, the little kid, the little girls, keep alive for you, and that you could take for yourself as wives. Now the problem is, you're telling you the soldiers could take these girls, but Pinchas was with them for those who fought in Mechemes Midyan, who the pasuk was said to them, and Pinchas was a kohen. So how could a kohen marry them? Oh, because she's under 3. And the giyairis, which is what they were when you take them and you bring them to the Jewish people, is permitted for a kohen. That is the 4th opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Now, says Rabban, what do they do with this pasuk? They say, no, hachi lachem, when they say keep them alive for you, doesn't mean for wives, it means lavadim l'shvachas. It means for servants and for maidservants, and therefore, it's not a ride. Now the Gemara says, all the 4 opinions learned it out from the same pasuk in Yecheskel. So the same pasuk is the source for all 4 opinions. Okay, this is interesting. Let's see how they all learn it out from the same pasuk. The pasuk says, Almana ugrusha, a widow and a divorcee, lo yikchu lehem lenashim, they should not take for themselves, for the kahanim, as wives, ki im besulois mizera beis Yisrael, except virgins from the seed of the Jewish house. Okay, that's the pasuk. So how are the 4 opinions learning out the same pasuk different ways? So Yehuda Saba, he was opinion number 1. He learns ad is kol zera mi Yisrael, until you have kol zera. What's kol? So Rashi explains the primary zera. Who's the primary seed? Is the father. Oh, so kahanim only allowed to marry when the father is Jewish seed. That's excluding if she's the daughter of a ger, who the father is not from Beis Yisrael. So therefore, he excludes, chops off, bas ger zachar. That's opinion number 1. Well, he held no. Mizera, when it says that he has to marry, the kohen has to marry from the zera Beis Yisrael, means for the miktzah zera, meaning even the weaker seed. For example, if the mother is Jewish, so ger that marries a Yisraelis is also going to be okay. It's only a problem if both are not Jewish, if both are gerim, oh, then it's not from zera Beis Yisrael. Opinion number 3. Rabbi Yossi Saba, he held, no, Misha Nizru Bi Yisrael. If the semination was when they were Jewish, that the conception has to be in sanctity, even if the parents are gerim. That's what Zera refers to. In the Zriya, the semination of the parents' copulation. And then, the 4th opinion. Shimon Yochi Sava, he held, Misha Nizru Bisuleha Bi Yisrael. That her virginity sprouted and finished when she was in the category of a Jewish person, meaning when she's 3 years old, and then her virginity is finished for the category of Bia, meaning that if she would have Bia from here on, they would not come back, because when a girl has Bia under the age of 3, they continue to come back, and she gets back her Basulim, as the Gemara darshans, that what he's seeing is here is Besulois Mizera Beis Yisrael means Har besulim should be from the zera, from the growth of a Yehudi, which she will have if she converted herself under the age of 3. And therefore, that's the 4 different opinions from the same pasuk regarding how we have the halacha of a kohen regarding marrying into the family of Ger.
Where do they get these opinions?
So this is Torah Misinai. This is their tradition from.
They all have different Masorah from different rabbis.
This is the classic question about, generally because there was Ayin Pon Torah, everyone heard the Torah and everyone has their own perception, and this is Elu ve'elu Divrei Mechayim. This is generally. There are also some machlekes that happened from when it was given over, and when you give over ideas, any idea could be understood in a different way. So even though the halacha is pure, but the vessel that's holding is going to be different. So that's oftentimes how you get different opinions too. Now, however, Amalei Rav Nachman Rav, as we continue to Beis, he says, he has a question. Once we brought in this pasuk, he just wants to understand now. Hi Kra, this pasuk, Reisha b'Kohen Gadol. Read the pasuk. It's talking about a high priest because it says Almana ugrusha lo yikchu ki im besulais. Now we know that halacha of having to marry a besula and not being able to marry almana is only by Kohen Gadol. So that's the beginning of the pasuk. But then read v'seifa is b'Kohen Hedyot, because the pasuk says besulais mizera beis Yisrael, and it says va'almana asher tia almana mikoyen yikchu. So the Gemara assumes that right now what that means to say is that an almana that's miyuchis, that's fit to marry into the kahuna, as actually one of the opinions later on, Rabbi Yehuda will darshan later on, means from those who can marry to kahuna. Now, an almana that should be permitted to a kohen, you only have by a kohen hedyot. So how does the pasuk just like shift gears and go into a kohen hedyot without telling us, like it sounds like it's talking about one person, so the reish is talking about kohen gadol. The Sefer tells you what type of almana you're allowed to marry, is obviously kohen hedyot because the kohen gadol is not allowed to marry. How does that make sense? So Amalei, he says yes. The pasuk shifted from kohen gadol to kohen hedyot. So the Gemara says, because of kurahachi, does the pasuk write like that it doesn't explicitly mention that we're talking about another person and it starts talking about someone else? So Amalei, he says yes. The Chesiv, I said I'll prove it to you from the pasuk in Shmuel Aleph. The pasuk says v'neir elikim, and the lamp of God terem yichbe, before it was extinguished. Shmuel shoichiv beheichel Hashem. And Shmuel was laying in the sanctuary of God. Now, it sounds like it's talking about one thing, that Shmuel was laying in the Heichel of Hashem. But it obviously cannot be talking like that, because Shmuel was not from Beis David. You can't even be sitting in the courtyard, only for the Davidic dynasty. So what do you mean Shmuel sleeping in the Heichel Hashem? You have to read the pasuk. No. The lamp of God, before it was extinguished in the sanctuary of God, Shmuel Sheichev, where was Shmuel sleeping? Bimkaima, in his place, which was where the Levium would stay there, guard the Beis Hamikdash, and that's actually how Targum Yonason translates Be'ezras Levoi, in the courtyard of the Levium, and the Heichel of Hashem was going on the word Ner, that the Menorah, which is Neheichel of Mishkan Shilai, that didn't go out yet. So you see that, a pasuk could switch and shift and talk about someone or something else in the same pasuk. Okay, but now the Gemara goes to explain, again, back to this pasuk in Yechezkel again. It says in the pasuk of Almana, this was the sefer the pasuk that we asked, that's obviously talking about a kohen hedyot. It says, and a widow, ashatia almana, mikoyin yikachu. A widow that's going to be widowed from a kohen, that's who the kohen should marry. It says, really? Mikoyin in? If she was a widow of a kohen, then a kohen is allowed to marry her, but Yisrael, but a widow of a regular Yisrael, loy? What do you mean? But a kohen hedyot is not prohibited on Almana. Why does he have to marry the widow of a kohen? It says, Gemara Nahachima, the way you have to read the pasuk is, mikoyin yikchu, from a kohen they shall take, meaning, mishar kahanim yikchu, from other kahanim they should take. In other words, coming to explain that we're talking about a kohen hedyot, and the pasuk should be read like this. And v'halmana, ashati almana, the widow that's going to be a widow, meaning even from Yisrael, mishar kahanim. Now, other kahanim that are not the kohen gadol, yikhu, they could take those women. So it's really actually delineating, telling you, who are we telling you? Because like we said, the Sefer is talking about a kohen hedyot, it doesn't tell us. Really, according to what the Gemara is saying now, it really is telling us shar kahanim. The other kahanim that are not the ratio of the pasuk of a kohen gadol, they could marry the almanas. Tandem Hach, similar in the Brisa, that this is the way you have to translate the pasuk. Mikayin Yichur, what does it mean from a kohen they should take? It doesn't mean from the widow of Kahan they should take. It means Mishar Kam Yichur, from the other Kam, they could take widows, but it could be any widow. That's one pshat. Now, Yehuda, which we referenced earlier from Rashi, he says a different pshat. It means min hamasiyim lekohuna yikru. It doesn't mean the widow of a kohen. It means a widow that can marry kahuna, meaning the widow of a man that man's daughter could have married to kahuna. What's that coming to exclude? It's coming to exclude the widow of a ger. Like we said, Rabbi Yehuda l'taimei. This is Rabbi Yehuda, according to his reasoning, because the Amar, he said, as we mentioned, the way he learned out from the pasuk in Yechezkel, that the Bas Ger Zachar is invalidated because it says Zera Beis Yisrael, which is this pasuk that we're learning out from, which has to be called Zera, excluding if the father is a Ger. So that's what it's saying, that in this pasuk is coming to teach us on a smachta that his wife, the Ger's wife, is also possible with his bia, because we know the halacha that we mentioned this opinion on the previous daf. Any man that you can marry his daughter, you can marry his widow. You cannot marry his daughter like a ger, which Rabbi Yehuda already explained to you, that you cannot go ahead and marry his daughter, as we see from the pasuk in Yechezkel of Kol Zera mi Beis Yisrael, has to be that the father is from the Jewish seed and not a ger. Then you cannot marry either his widow. That's what the pasuk is coming to teach me, that it has to be the almana ashatiya, almana mikoyin yikru, meaning she has to be a widow of a man that his daughter would have been fit for kahuna, excluding a ger, that his daughter bas ger zachar is kabas chal zachar, which his daughter is possible, and therefore his wife is also going to be possible for the kahuna, and therefore kahan cannot marry the widow of a ger. Now the Gemara goes back to the halacha of our Mishnah. We mentioned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Shloimy, he says that af ger shenas giyeris, that also a ger that marries a giyeris is going to be kosher for kahuna. Only problem is if she herself was a giyeris. Now I'm going to have Nun Mishmei de Ula. It says Allah Rabbi Yisrael, a kohen can marry a family of gerim, even if both parents are gerim, he can marry their daughter. But from the day the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Nogu Kahanim Silsul Ba'atzman. The Kahanim conducted themselves in a higher level, and they treated themselves Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who we said his opinion was that if both parents are Gerim, then it's going to be possible for Kahuna. It's only good if at least one of the parents are Yisrael. So Amar of Nachman says, Huna said to me, Bali Malech, so it depends. If someone comes to ask, it comes to the Rav, it comes to the Bezdin, he says, I'm a kohen, so we instruct him like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, say, look, don't marry this girl if both of her parents are gay. But Nasa, if the kohen already married the daughter of a ger and the geyeres, then we don't remove her from him like Rabbi Yasi, but the Eved will pass like Rabbi Yasi, that it's okay if both of her parents are gerim, as long as she herself, not like Rabbi Shimon ben Yochi, not that she herself, as long as she's not a geris herself, the kohen can marry this woman. Now look at the next Mishnah, continuing on this theme about yichus, one of the psula yichus, specifically that of mamzeras, which we mentioned in the 10 yuchasin that Ezra took up from Bavel. Says the Mishnah, ha'omer benizem mamzer. If someone says, this child of mine is an illegitimate child, he was born from a chiva krisis, I was intimate with my sister, and this is, or an eshes ish, or whatever this is, this child of mine is a mamzer. It's ein neman. He's not believed. Why? Because he's a relative. And the relative is not kosher to say testimony. And I don't care, many famous stories we mentioned, Moshe Vayachasna, and the mother was saying something, you're a karev, you're not believed to say that this is what happened, and you can't say that. And even if the father and the mother both agree, and they say, she's pregnant. Say, oh, b'shat tova, when you expect this, that. Say, by the way, mamzerhu, this child is not from my husband. Pretty straight open. It's from some other man. Einam nemanim. They're not even believed regarding the status of this child. The Gemara is going to ask, what's a philo? What's the chiddush more in the sefer than the reisha? You already said that the father is not believed. The Gemara will explain. But Yehuda says, no, nemanim. And as Rashi points out, he disagrees also on the reisha. The father is believed to say, Benize mamzer, and the Gemara is going to explain the reasoning for this. First, the Gemara asks on the Chiddush of my vafilish nehem. You already told me that the father is not believed to say my child's a mamzer. What's this second case of even if they both agree when she's pregnant to say that it's a mamzer that they're not believed? It says Gemara loy mebayu kama. It's saying that you don't even have to say, meaning it's a chiddush. Loy mebayu ihu. I don't have to tell you the father the loy kimle where he doesn't know if she's pregnant from him or someone else. He doesn't know. Could have been the day before, day after. He doesn't know exactly. That's the chiddush of the sefer. That even her, the kimla, she knows if she was with another man or not. Loy mehemna, she's not believed because again, the only way you can invalidate the child is with a full-fledged testimony, and the mother is not believed. That's one chiddush, and another chiddush is v'loy mebay. I don't have to tell you heicha de islay chazaka de kashres. In the case of the Reisha, he has a son, a 16-year-old son, and he's saying, "Oh, this is my mom's rule." Where up until now, until the father said "Penizem mamzer," again he's talking about a son that's there. He's working with his son. There's a kaddish zoga, and this one's my mom's rule. Says, but he had a cheskes kashrus. We presume kol bilas acha bayil, right bilas. We presume it's from the father. So that's what we're saying. I don't have to tell in the case of the ratio where the child had a chazaka of kashrus dolem hemni. Okay, we're saying the father's not believed to uproot the chazaka, presumption of validity. That's what we're saying. The case of the sefer is telling us a chiddush. Even when she's just pregnant, when there's a fetus. The lesser chazaka de kasha is where the child's not born yet. We don't have a specific identity for the child to say that he has any chazaka yet. Even over there, we're not going to believe the parents. So that's two chidushim in the case of the sefer. Now, Rabbi Yehuda, however, he disagreed. He says, no, nemonim. The parents are believed, and even the father's believed to say that this child of mine is a mamzer. So what's the source? The Gemara says, get the time like learn the brayso. We quoted this in Daf Ayin Daldim and Alf. The pasuk says Yaker. It says by the Ben Ahuv and the Ben Asnu, he says that the child, the firstborn of the son of the hated one, Yaker, he will recognize to give him a double portion. What do you mean Yaker? He'll recognize him. It means Yakirenu lacherim. He'll make him recognize to others, meaning to say Mikan Amid Rehud. This is Neman Adam Loim Zebed Nebachar. Person believed to say, this is my firstborn son. What do you mean Yakir? He'll make him recognize that the father is the one that will establish that fact. He could say, this is my firstborn son. Oh, so Rabbi Yehuda goes further. He says, just like a person believed to say, this is my firstborn son, as you see from the pasuk. So the Torah gives him that nemanas. So it is believed to say, oh, but by the way, this child is the son of a woman that was a divorcee, and I'm a kohen. This is the ben chalutza, and therefore you see his neman lipsul also. They say no ein neman, as Rashi explains, that they hold that when you come in to invalidate, you're not believed. Obviously, regarding Bukhari, they don't disagree. The pasuk says Yakir, but regarding that, they disagree and say you're not Neman Lipsol. Now, Amalei Rav Nachman Yitzchak L'Ravi says, Bishlem Rabbi Yehuda. I understand according to Rabbi Yehuda. Hainu dechsiv Yakir. That's why it says Yakir, to tell you that you're so believed to make the child recognize to even to say he's a Ben Gerusha or a Mamzer. El Rabban and Yakir Lamalei. According to Rabban, what do you need Yakir for? To say he's a firstborn, well, we see who's born first. So it's no, but the pasuk is coming to teach you simply for the halacha of the Bechar. For example, if the father came from overseas and it was never established to us that this child's the firstborn, sometimes you have a son that looks older and one that looks younger and no one knows. It's only based on the father's testimony. That would be when you would need to have Yakir. Yeah, it's teaching you the halacha of Bechar. So the Gemara says that, wait a second. So what halachic relevancy does it have to tell me that the fathers believe to say that this son is the firstborn? So you would say simply, Los Lipishnayim. Because now that's relevant because who's going to get a double portion? So but that doesn't make sense. Pshita, obviously the fathers believed. Lamali Kro, why would I need a pasuk Yakir to tell me we believe him to say it was his firstborn son so that child's going to get a double portion? What do you mean you have a migui? What's the migui? Migui is a principle of belief based on you could have done something else, so believe me anyway, and I don't need a pasuk for migui, because migudi matana. If the father wants to, he could gift everything he has, his whole estate, to this one son. Milo Yavale, you don't think he could give it to him? So believe him also when he says that he is going to be the firstborn to get a double portion. I don't need a pasuk of Yakir to believe him when he could have given him everything. So how could you say according to Rabbanan, that's what Yaakov is coming to teach you? It says Gemara, no, we're talking about benachasim shenaflu la'achamikin. We're talking about assets that fall that he gets after he said in front of us that this son is my b'char. 2 weeks later, a month later, a year later, he goes and he has a windfall and he gets a few $1,000,000. Now he wants to go far away, and he testifies in him and he says that look, that if anything is going to come to the state or whatever it is when he's still alive, he wants that this son should take his portion of the b'chera. Oh, so therefore, if you didn't have a pasuk, you wouldn't have a migui. Why? Because if he goes away, he's like, okay, children, I'm retiring. I'm going to live on the parkway. I want to live somewhere else. You guys are not going to know where I am. Where he wouldn't be able to give it anymore. Why not? Because if he's going to inherit something, if he's going to get something from his grandpapa that dies, and then this father who's leaving is going to acquire it, we know the halacha is ino demakin davar shalai b'la'olam. He can't not. You're telling me the whole principle is based on the migui that believe him that he's a b'char, because if he wants to, he can give him everything. But what you're gonna, when you leave now, we're not going to see you until the day you die. We're going to hear from some message that you passed away in some crazy country. In 5 years from now, when you're still alive, and then you inherit from your grandfather who passed away, you're not going to be able to be makna that now. You're not around to be makna then. To say that he gets it now, you can't. So the only way he'll be able to get it is Teres Yerusha. That you need Yaker for. So what are you saying that? So therefore, the Gemara is saying it's for Nechasim Shnafal Achabakin that you need the pasuk Yaker, because that you wouldn't have a migui for, because the person wouldn't be able to be maknit now for what's going to be later. But the Gemara says, wait, that answer is only works for some opinions. But according to Meir, the Amar that he says, that a person could be maknit things that are not here yet. So Yaakov, we're back to the question: what do you need Yaakov to say to recognize this child as a firstborn son to get a double portion? Because you're not going to have a migui for when he leaves, and he's not going to be able to be maknit now for then. But he may hold you could be maknit. So just say before you leave, say, okay, whatever I'm ever going to get should be for this son a double portion, and I have a migui. I could have given it to him anyway. So why do you need Yaakov for? So the Gemara says we're too much enough like Kishu Geisis. That where Rashi learns this is that it's something that he's going to get when he's in the throes of death. Where after he testifies this, it's going to be effective that if he's going to inherit assets when he's like mamash moments before he's going to die, that moment when they have the eyes looking out, where this one should take the portion of the b'chayr, because if the pasuk would not believe the father with Yaker to recognize the son, so Migu wouldn't work over here. Why not? I thought Remeir says that you can be makan davar shalei b'la'olam. So just right now, when you say he's my b'char, believe him, because he could say whatever, all my assets till the day I die. No, because when you say the nechasim that are going to come to me when I'm going to be a geisis are given to this person, there you haven't said anything. Why? Because since at the moment when it comes to the world, you cannot give a gift, and that's what Tais discusses, seemingly other cases also you could say, if not just a geisis, you could say if a guy, let's say, became mute or whatever, I'll upon him, but that's the idea. You won't be able to say it then when you're a geisis, so therefore it's not going to work. As Rashi explains a little bit more, he says, why'd you pick, when he's a geisis, why didn't you pick lachamisa? Why didn't you say that for things that he inherits after he dies, you're also not going to be able to say that you don't have the migui then? Because even though you say that it works to be makin davar shalei, it's only that, but then you have the ability to. Why picking specifically geises versus death? So that's what Rashi no, because actually his b'chayra also doesn't work for things he inherits la'achamisa. Because the b'chayr does not take what's called b'ro'u like he does b'muchzik. Ro'u is when he dies, the father was not yet in possession of it. It's just rov to come to him. The Torah tells you in the Devarim Chavalv, it's only b'chayra gets the double portion b'chalash yimatzila, whatever he has. The father, let's say a month after he passed away, suddenly he gets a payout from the insurance company, whatever it is that. The b'chayra doesn't take a double portion of that. It's ro'u, but it's not. He wasn't in possession of that. So therefore, we didn't talk about what's la'achamisa, but we spoke about when he's a geisis. When he's a geisis, he's still alive. Alts b'chayra, he gets a double portion, what the father got when he was a geisis. But you wouldn't, even according to May, you would not be able to have the migoy on makna davar shalei b'la'olam, because you have to be able to go ahead and be makna. although you're not actually doing it, you're in some faraway country, but you have to be able to. As a geisus, you wouldn't be able to. So it's but that case of geisus that the Torah is telling you, yakir, sheikeren lachem for the halacha of b'chayr. But you're right, in general, according to Chum, you wouldn't even need yakir, which always comes out very interesting when you come out in some of the Gemaras, that according to Rabbi Huda, yakir is a huge halacha. Yakir is a halacha that he could say, b'niza mamzer, b'niza, whatever, you could say a lot of things about you. You have that ability. According to Rabban, it's not true. You can't. You're not Neman. So what's the fault of b'chayr? B'chayr have a migoy. Yeah, but it's, according to a mayor, it's for a case when you're going to be a geisus, then you wouldn't be able to have the migoy. According to, if you don't like a mayor, so that's for any case of future things, which would only work for from yakir and not from the migoy, because you cannot be makir the b'shalom. According to a mayor, specifically would be, if he held like Rabbanan, specifically in the case of geisus. Thank you to any time for hosting us.